On Sunday, March 15th, 2015, at the Academy of Vocal Arts, Lyric Fest presented Waxing Poetic in This Blue Room. Before the performance began, Composer-in-residence Kile Smith addressed the audience.
I'll talk just a little bit about how I came to write this music. The paintings were the genesis of all this. Laura Pritchard's batik artwork, which is the wax painting on silk. It's absolutely beautiful, and so when I was first shown that artwork, I was very much taken with it, as you all have been, as you've been looking at it, I'm sure. And then I saw the poems. I was taken very much with those, and those were poems that were written on the paintings, that were inspired by the various paintings. So Lyric Fest said, we would like you to write music to these poems based on the paintings. We wanted to put together a concert-length event, but it involves looking at the paintings, it involves reading the poetry, and it involves hearing music to somehow to put that all together. So we came up with the idea of a song cycle of 40 to 45 minutes. Well, we had, I think it was 21, 22, 23 poems. That's a lot of poems. They ended up with 17, and we wanted to have a representation from all of the poets. So we ended up, I think, with a good, pretty fair representation in 17 poems, a nice round number of 17. And so the composer has to start thinking about mechanics here, and that only leaves you with about 2.5 minutes and change per song to get through them all. So consequently, all the songs are short. I may have a song that goes to 4 minutes and something, but most of them are shorter. I had to put the poems in some kind of order, because remember now, these poets looked at all the paintings and they just wrote poems independently. They had nothing to do with each other. They went off and wrote the poems on whatever paintings that they wanted to. Some of the poems are on the same painting. 2 poems on the same painting may have nothing whatsoever to do with each other as far as a subject that you might try to intuit. Then it came to me to put them all together. The one image that was the strongest to me from the very beginning was the phrase watermelon eyes. And you'll see that in the painting. I don't know what that means. Are the eyes shaped like watermelon seeds? I don't know, and I haven't asked the poet, and I don't know. But just that phrase, watermelon eyes, really struck me. As I was going over the word watermelon eyes, I heard a woman singing it, and the woman's voice was like Sarah Vaughan's. So I started with that poem, and I started with that sound world. It's not even a sound world, it was just this kind of a flash of a sonic image. And that's where I started. Well, it so happens that Watermelon Eyes is based on the painting 56. That's the name of the painting. There was another poem that's based on 56, and that's Like Lost Beads. Watermelon Eyes is number 1 in your program. Like Lost Beads is number 6. Well, what if I write one song that will do double duty? That it will be one singer will sing one of the poems, and it'll have a certain accompaniment. And the other singer will sing another poem, but on the same musical accompaniment. So what I started out with was writing a duet. But the girl was singing one poem, the boy was singing another poem. The whole idea being that they would sing that together, but that I could later then pull out the girl's part and have that done by itself, pull out the boy's part and have that done by itself, and then they could be sung together too. Now, it's a problem because just putting them together is a challenge, but that's what a composer is supposed to do. The other challenge was that, now you're going to hear this music 3 times in 45 minutes, so the music better be okay, so you don't get sick of it. So that was another challenge. The very first song is Watermelon Eyes, that's the mezzo singing, and then the baritone singing the same music, but his own notes, that is the same piano music, but his own line over that, that's number 6. And then the duet comes later, and that's number 11. You'll hear them all together. And then for a grand finale, it ends up as number 17, and I kick a 3rd poem into that and add that in for the finale. which I then have to write new music to end it up because I didn't have enough room to put everything. So that's how that worked. And so what that made for me was I had pieces of the cycle, and that gave me a structure, and it fell into 3 parts. Now we do it all together. We don't stop to part 1 and take a bow, although there will be readings in between here. The real fun thing of it for me was taking all these poems that really had nothing to do with each other, written by 4 different poets. They didn't collaborate in writing these, but I went through and I had to make sense of them. And so I put them together in a way that in my mind made some kind of dramatic sense. Use these disparate elements to tell some kind of a story. I would laugh at times when things would happen. I would put these together and I'd say, well, she's worried about this. And then he says, no, calm down, calm down. Where in the poems, that they had nothing to do with each other. But so that's my fault, okay? The poems, you can't blame the poets for that. So that's the guy. That's the one guy came in. So we had a woman painter and women poets, and then the guy comes in and he says, well, I'm going to make my story out, so you can blame me for that. Now the project was called Waxing Poetic. That is the project of putting the artwork with the poems. But the word blue is all through these poems. The paintings are blue. There's a lot of blue in these paintings. And if you talk to Laura, she will tell you about the colors and why certain colors are used. I came down to using "in this blue room" as the title of the cycle. That's a phrase from one of the poems. I make a big deal. Kile Smith makes a big deal that he's writing jazz. So, as I was reading these poems, and as I heard Sarah Vaughan's voice, Billie Holiday's voice, John Hendrix's voice from Lambert, Hendrix, and Ross, because these are the LPs that I grew up with. I was born in 1956, so these are my parents' records. They belong to the Columbia Record Club. My mom likes jazz. We had all these Lambert, Hendrix, and Ross. We had Hi-Lo's records. I love the Hi-Lo's. We have Maynard Ferguson. We have Stan Kenton, Stan Getz, all sorts of things. Jimmy Smith, the great Philadelphia organist. So all that I grew up with. So even before I got a transistor radio and was listening to Hi-Lit and Wibbage and WFIL and Top 40, even before I was listening to all that, which I got heavily into too, I was listening to this other stuff. So in a way, it is kind of a walk down memory lane for me. I'm really trying to grasp what it is, this sound world that I grew up with, that I love so much. Now, I'm not a jazz player, I'm a failed electric bass guitarist. I rose to the point of being fairly mediocre as a bass player. And then I started hearing really good bass players, and then I thought, you know, if I do one thing, maybe I should do composition, and not that, and not write poetry, and not paint. One of the things I try to do is write really good walking bass lines, which is really hard to do. By the way, I hate music that's jazzy. There are composers, you know, long-haired classical concert composers who will write music, and you'll hear like a crossover music that's supposed to be like jazzy. I hate that stuff. No. I really do. Can I say that? I like jazz. I don't like jazz-y. I figured if I'm going to write jazz, I'm going to write jazz. In for a dime, in for a dollar, and if I fail at it, then I fail, but it'll be a glorious failure, and everyone can pass me by on the street and look and laugh at me. But that's fine. That's what I want to do. For instance, right out of the box, when the baritone sings, "Like lost beads of a broken necklace, images gather in the corner and unroll like film." Well, I give him one of these lines. They called it vocalese back in the 40s and 50s. Vocalese with an ESE on the end. And what that was Lambert, Hendrix, and Ross would do it. Eddie Jefferson did it with "There I go, there I go, there I go, there I go again," which was words that he wrote on top of a jazz solo from a saxophonist. So he took this solo, and instead of scatting the solo, scat's another thing, and I love scat, but that's when you just use nonsense syllables. When you actually write words to it, write a lyric to the solo, that's called vocalese. And I wanted to get that feel from some of these, so I have him singing, "Images gather like a da-da-da-da-da-da." So that's in there. So you have Sarah Vaughan, you have Billie Holiday, you've got Eddie Jefferson in there. I would get reflections of other songs that would just come up in the middle of nowhere, and I just kind of tried to go with that. I just wanted to leave you with this, is that I fell in love with the paintings and I fell in love with the poetry. I feel so lucky to be a composer because when I write for words, I live with a poem. I live with the text. It's like an actor who has to memorize a script and then come up on stage and say the script and say it to you and say it to other people. And he or she gets to live that. And I feel that I'm lucky because I get to live that. And then other things would just pop out of the poem where they didn't at first. And little things like in number 14, she dresses in her subjects. Unexpected brocade patterns, gold thread drapes her body, this robe. And then she takes her sash to wrap her famously queenly hairline. The word hair is all through these poems. And, all of a sudden, I started noticing that. And I go back, and hair is here, and hair is there, and hairline, and all that. And I just fell in love with these poems over and over and over again. I hope that you get some of the love for these poems and for this painting that I did. And you are going to be blown away by the performance. I know you are. Thank you.
Lyric Fest's next concert, I'll Make Me a World, will be on Sunday, April 19th at 3 p.m. at the Church of the Holy Trinity on Rittenhouse Square. It will include a new work by Kile Smith.